All right, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we're going to take a look at a single, very well-known verse from the Quran, and using a pretty unique analytical method from our source material, we're going to unlock a much deeper code that's been kind of hiding in plain sight.
So this is Qur'an chapter 40 verse 60, just as you've probably heard it a dozen times. On the surface it seems pretty straightforward, right? A simple promise, you pray to God, God will answer. And if you're too proud to worship, well, there are consequences. Seems simple enough.
But this is where things get really interesting. What if that common understanding, the one we all know, is based on a translation that kind of misses the entire point? What if the key words here, call, respond, and worship, actually mean something completely different within the book's own system?
To solve this little puzzle, our source material suggests we have to bypass centuries of traditional interpretations. Instead, we're going to use a really rigorous method to decode the Quran using nothing but its own internal code. This whole method is built on 4 simple but really powerful principles. First, the idea that the Quran is its own best dictionary. It defines its own terms. Second, we have to set aside all the later stories and assumptions that came from different sects. Third, and this is a big one, we decode words by seeing how they're used elsewhere in the text itself. And finally, whatever we conclude has to make sense. It has to be coherent and ethically clear.
So, with those rules in mind, let's start by taking apart that first key term, God's response, the word istajībū. You know, the common understanding is pretty transactional. I will respond is usually taken to mean I will grant your wishes. It's almost like a cosmic vending machine. You put in a prayer, you get what you ask for. But does the Quran actually support that idea?
Well, when we look at how the Qur'an itself uses this exact same root word, a very different picture starts to emerge. In one verse, God responds by lifting what troubles someone, removing an obstacle. In another, the response is directly tied to being guided. Notice what's missing? Neither one is about granting a specific wish.
This is a huge distinction. God's response, according to the text's own usage, isn't about some supernatural intervention to give you what you want. It's about opening a path for you. It's about providing guidance, clarity, and removing the barriers that are in your way.
Okay, this is cool. Let's keep going and see how this builds. Now we'll look at the other key phrases, what it really means to call on God, and what service to God actually entails.
The word uduni is almost always translated as pray to me or ask me for things. But check this out. The Quran uses that same root word to mean an invitation toward a principle, like peace, or a call toward faithfulness. See? It's about orienting yourself towards something, not just asking for a gift.
And that points to a completely different meaning. Ud'uni, or call on me, becomes a call for a fundamental shift in your focus. It's saying, align your life toward truth itself as your ultimate reference point, not man-made traditions, not your own ego.
And we see the exact same pattern with the word ibadah, which is almost always translated as ritual worship. But its Quranic root implies something way, way broader, a total commitment to a way of life. It means submission to the path of truth and justice, not just performing a ceremony.
Okay, this brings us to what might be the most critical part of the whole verse, that warning against arrogance. Because if service isn't just about ritual, then what in the world does it mean to be arrogant away from that service?
So let's ask that question directly. With these new definitions in our toolkit, what does this arrogance actually look like in practice?
And you know what? The Qur'an is incredibly consistent on this. Arrogance isn't about missing a prayer. It's about rejecting truth when you see it. It's about preferring your social status, refusing to be morally accountable, and just blindly following customs instead of engaging with the source.
So the conclusion here is pretty stark. The Quran actually never connects this kind of terminal arrogance to simply failing to perform a physical ritual. The focus is always on your inner state and your relationship with truth.
And this reveals what our source calls a kind of great manipulation over time. The Quran's focus on arrogance toward truth was slowly, systematically reframed into a focus on arrogance toward rituals. The whole thing was shifted from a matter of inner honesty to one of external performance.
So, let's put it all back together. When you take these decoded terms, a completely new understanding of this verse just emerges. It's not a simple command anymore. It actually becomes a description of a universal law. So here it is, the verse again, but this time translated using only the Quran's internal dictionary. Align yourselves toward me,
and I will respond to you. I'll open the way. Indeed, those who act arrogantly away from this commitment to truth will enter a state of humiliation.
You see how it's totally transformed? It's no longer just a ritual instruction. Instead, it becomes this single, incredibly powerful psychological law that governs our inner lives.
And really, this is the ultimate takeaway. The verse is describing a natural law of cause and effect. When you orient your life toward truth, guidance and clarity become possible. But when you turn away from that truth because of ego or custom or fear, the natural consequence is an internal state of humiliation and collapse. It's literally a law of consciousness.
So this analysis of just a single verse leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought. It really challenges us to ask, what other foundational texts, what other ideas or beliefs have we been taught to just read and repeat, but have never actually been given the tools to decode for ourselves?